My 4-year-old son beat his dad's new wife unconscious at their wedding, and I'm so proud of him. The police arrived at the venue while guests were still screaming. My son Tyler sat on the floor with blood on his hands, completely calm, while his dad's new wife Angela lay motionless near the cake table. Everyone called me within minutes, saying my son had lost his mind, that he'd attacked Angela for no reason during the reception. My ex-husband Mark was threatening to press charges. His family was calling Tyler a monster, but I drove to that venue and picked up my son without a single word of apology, because I knew something they didn't, something I'd been noticing for 6 months but couldn't prove. It started the first time I dropped off my younger daughter Bree at Mark's new house after he and Angela got engaged. Bree was 8 and excited about having a stepmom who worked as a pediatric nurse, but when I picked Bree up 2 days later, she was quieter than usual. She said her stomach hurt and she felt tired all the time at Dad's house. I asked Angela if Bree had eaten something bad, and she got defensive immediately, said Bree was probably just adjusting to the new routine and I should stop being paranoid. Over the next few months, the pattern repeated. Every weekend, Bree stayed with Mark. She'd come home exhausted and nauseous, but during the weeks, she stayed with me. She was fine, energetic, normal, healthy. I took her to 3 different doctors. They ran every test and found nothing wrong. One doctor actually suggested it was psychosomatic, that Bree was making herself sick because she didn't want to stay at her dad's house, but Tyler wasn't buying it. He started watching Angela during drop-offs and pickups, paying attention to things the rest of us missed. He mentioned how Angela always insisted on making Bree's meals herself, how she'd get upset if Mark tried to help in the kitchen when Bree was there, how she kept a locked cabinet in the kitchen that nobody else was allowed to open. I told Tyler he was being paranoid like me, but he wouldn't let it go. 2 months before the wedding, Bree started having seizures, small ones at first, just a few seconds where she'd zone out and not respond, then bigger ones that landed her in the emergency room 3 times. The doctors were baffled. Her blood work showed elevated levels of something they couldn't identify. They asked if she'd been exposed to any chemicals or medications. Mark and Angela both swore she hadn't been near anything dangerous. Angela cried in the hospital, playing the concerned stepmom role perfectly. She even brought Bree homemade soup while she recovered, insisting it would help her feel better. Tyler was at the hospital that day. He watched Angela feed Bree the soup, saw how she made sure Bree finished every drop. That night, after Angela left, Tyler asked me a question that made my blood run cold. Mom, what if Angela is the reason Bree keeps getting sick? I told him that was crazy. That Angela was a nurse who worked with children. Why would she hurt Bree? But Tyler had been doing research. He'd learned about Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where caretakers make people sick for attention. He said all the symptoms matched. Bree only got sick at Dad's house. Angela was always the hero bringing her to doctors. The seizures started getting worse as the wedding got closer. I wanted to believe Tyler was wrong, but I couldn't ignore the timeline anymore. I called Mark and told him I thought Angela was poisoning Bree. He hung up on me, called me jealous and unstable, said he was documenting everything for a custody modification. The wedding day came, and Mark insisted Bree had to be there as his flower girl, even though she'd had a seizure just 2 days before. I dressed her carefully, checking her over for any signs she wasn't feeling well. She seemed okay, excited even. Tyler rode with us to the venue, quiet and tense in the back seat. The ceremony went fine. Bree walked down the aisle without any problems, but during the reception, I saw Tyler following Angela toward the back hallway. I thought he was just going to the bathroom. Then I heard Bree scream. I ran toward the sound and found Tyler on top of Angela, punching her while she thrashed underneath him. In Angela's hand was a small bottle, and standing 3 feet away was Bree, holding a glass of juice that Angela had just given her. Tyler was screaming that he saw Angela put something in it, that he'd watched her pull the bottle from her purse and pour drops into Bree's drink when she thought nobody was looking. The bottle was still in Angela's hand when security pulled Tyler off her, and that's when I saw the label and realized what my son had just stopped. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. The bottle in Angela's hand has a pharmacy label on it, but not one I recognize. The security guard is holding Tyler back, and my son is still shouting that he saw Angela putting something in Bree's drink. Mark is on his knees beside Angela, who's completely unconscious, blood trickling from where her head hit the floor when she fell. Someone call 911, Mark screams, cradling Angela's head. I'm frozen for just a second before maternal instinct kicks in. I grab Bree and pull her away from the juice, away from Angela, away from the chaos unfolding. My daughter is trembling, confused by what's happening. Don't drink that, I tell her firmly, pointing to the juice. Don't touch it. The wedding guests are in various states of panic and confusion. Some are backing away, others are pulling out phones to record. I hear sirens in the distance already. Someone must have called immediately when the commotion started. What did you do? Mark is shouting at Tyler now, his face contorted with rage and fear. What the hell did you do? Tyler isn't struggling against the security guard anymore. He's oddly calm, like he's finally completed a mission he's been planning for months. Check what's in that bottle, he says, pointing to Angela's hand. Check what she was putting in Bree's drink. The first police officers arrive within minutes, followed closely by paramedics. They secure the scene with surprising efficiency, separating witnesses and establishing a perimeter. I hold Bree close, refusing to let go of her even when they ask to speak with her. A female officer approaches us, her expression professionally neutral. Ma'am, we need to understand what happened here. I explain as clearly as I can, pointing to the juice and the bottle still clutched in Angela's unconscious hand. The officer signals to her colleagues, and they carefully bag both items as evidence. The paramedics are working on Angela, checking her vitals, applying a neck brace. One of them gently pries the bottle from her fingers and hands it to a police officer, who examines it closely. This appears to be a mixture of ipecac syrup and something else, he says, bagging it carefully. We'll need to get this tested immediately. Mark is beside himself, alternating between concern for Angela and fury at Tyler. I'm pressing charges, he shouts in my direction. Your son is going to jail for this. He's out of control. Mark, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. Tyler saw Angela putting something in Bree's drink. drink. The same Bree who's been having unexplained seizures and illness every time she stays with you. That's insane. Mark's face is red with anger. Angela is a pediatric nurse. She would never hurt Bree. One of the officers approaches with a glass of juice. Sir, ma'am, we're going to need statements from everyone, but right now we're treating this as a potential poisoning attempt. The substance in this drink appears to match what was in the bottle. Mark's face goes from red to white in seconds. That's impossible. The paramedics have stabilized Angela and are loading her onto a stretcher. She's still unconscious as they wheel her toward the ambulance. A detective arrives and begins interviewing Tyler, who calmly explains everything. His suspicions, his research, what he saw today. I've been watching her for months. Tyler tells the detective. She always makes Bree's food and drinks. She has a locked cabinet at their house. Bree only gets sick at Dad's house, never at ours. The detective takes detailed notes, then asks, and what made you suspect poisoning specifically? I researched Munchausen syndrome by proxy after Bree started having seizures. Tyler explains, his voice steady despite everything. Angela always wanted to be the one to take Bree to the doctor. She seemed almost happy when Bree was sick. Today I followed her because I knew she'd try something at the wedding. It was too perfect an opportunity. Everyone distracted, celebrating. When I saw her pull that bottle from her purse and put drops in Bree's juice, I couldn't let Bree drink it. While Tyler is giving his statement, a police officer approaches me with news that makes my blood run cold. Ma'am, preliminary tests indicate the substance in the drink contains ipecac syrup mixed with what appears to be antifreeze. We're still waiting on full lab confirmation, but if your daughter had consumed this, she could have died. I hold Bree tighter, tears streaming down my face. My son saved his sister's life. At the hospital, Angela regains consciousness and immediately denies everything. She claims Tyler attacked her unprovoked, that she had nothing in her hand, that this is all a misunderstanding, but the evidence tells a different story. The police search her purse and find not just the bottle of poisonous mixture, but a small notebook detailing Bree's symptoms and medication dosages dating back 6 months. This is a setup, Angela insists from her hospital bed, her face bruised from Tyler's attack. That boy hates me. He planted that stuff in my purse. Mark stands in the corner of the hospital room, his face ashen as he listens to the detective explain what they found. I can see him struggling to process it all, to reconcile the woman he married with someone capable of poisoning his daughter. Why would she do this? He asks no one in particular. It doesn't make any sense. It's called Munchausen syndrome by proxy, the detective explains. It's a psychological disorder where a caregiver, usually a parent or guardian, makes someone in their care sick to get attention and sympathy. Mark shakes his head. No, there has to be another explanation. But there isn't. By evening, Child Protective Services has placed Bree temporarily in my full custody. The hospital has taken blood samples from her, and they match traces of the substances found in Angela's poisonous mixture. Tyler sits beside me in the hospital waiting room while doctors examine Bree one more time. He's quiet, processing everything that's happened. How did you know? I ask him. How did you figure it all out when none of us could see it? He shrugs, suddenly looking very much like the 14-year-old boy he is, not the detective he's had to become. I just paid attention, and I couldn't let her hurt Bree anymore. By morning, Angela's nursing license has been suspended pending investigation. The hospital where she works has launched an internal review of all her patient cases. Mark still can't look me in the eye, torn between defending his new wife and facing the horrifying truth about what she's done to his daughter. As we leave the hospital with Bree, who's smiling for the first time in months, I put my arm around Tyler's shoulders. You saved your sister, I tell him. You're a hero. He shakes his head slightly. I'm just her brother, he says quietly. That's my job. Angela is released from the hospital the next day, her face a patchwork of bruises and a bandage covering where they stitched the gash on her temple. She walks out with Mark supporting her, both of them refusing to look in my direction as I stand with Tyler and Bree in the hospital waiting area. The police officer assigned to the case, Detective Ramirez, watches the interaction carefully. She's claiming Tyler attacked her without provocation. Detective Ramirez tells me quietly, says she never had any bottle, and that your son has been hostile toward her since she started dating Mark. I feel my blood pressure rising. That's absurd. The police found the poison in her purse. We did, he confirms, and we're taking this very seriously. But she's sticking to her story, and your ex-husband is backing her up. 2 days later, I'm served with papers. Mark is filing for emergency full custody of Bree, claiming that I've poisoned Tyler against Angela and coached him to attack her. The allegations are so outlandish, I actually laugh when my attorney reads them to me over the phone, but she doesn't join in. This isn't funny, Lisa, she says. Mark's attorney is claiming you've been jealous of Angela from the beginning and manipulated Tyler into believing she was hurting Bree. That's insane, I say. The police found poison in her purse, in Bree's drink, and they're claiming Tyler planted it there. I hang up and find Tyler sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. He looks up when I enter, his eyes haunted. They're saying I made it up, aren't they? He asks. I sit beside him, putting my arm around his shoulders. Yes, but we know the truth, and the evidence will prove it. The toxicology report comes back 3 days later, confirming what we already knew. Bree had traces of both ipecac syrup and ethylene glycol, the main ingredient in antifreeze, in her system. The levels weren't high enough to be immediately fatal, but showed a pattern of consistent exposure over time. Detective Ramirez calls me personally with the news. We've obtained a warrant to search your ex-husband's house, he tells me. Based on this report and your son's statement, we have probable cause. The search reveals everything. In Angela's home office, behind a locked cabinet that Tyler had mentioned seeing her access before Bree got sick, the police find an array of substances: ipecac syrup, antifreeze, eye drops, and various prescription medications that Angela had access to as a nurse. They also find a journal detailing Bree's symptoms with clinical precision, along with notes about dosages and effects. She kept records, Detective Ramirez tells me, his voice tight with controlled anger, like she was conducting some kind of experiment on your daughter. When they seize Angela's phone, the evidence becomes overwhelming. Her search history is filled with queries about untraceable poisons, symptoms of various toxins, and how to induce seizures. There are also searches for Munchausen by proxy success stories and how to make child sick without detection. Most damning of all, the police interview Angela's colleagues at the hospital. 3 nurses come forward with stories of how they'd found Angela's behavior with certain pediatric patients concerning how those children sometimes experienced mysterious complications when she was on shift, how she'd volunteer to care for the sickest kids, how she'd sometimes seem almost disappointed when they improved. Mark calls me late one night, his voice broken and slurred. I can tell he's been drinking. I didn't know, he says, and I hear him choking back tears. I swear to God, Lisa, I didn't know she was hurting our baby. You should have believed Tyler, I say, unable to keep the anger from my voice. He tried to tell you. I know. He's sobbing now. The police showed me everything. The searches on her phone, the journal, the poisons. She had it all organized, like it was normal. Are you still supporting her? I ask, my voice cold. There's a long pause before he answers. No. I confronted her after the police left. I needed to hear it from her. And she admitted it. His voice breaks. But she said she was helping Bree, that she was making her stronger by exposing her to small amounts of toxins, that she was building her immunity. She actually believed she was doing something good. I feel sick. That's insane. I know, he whispers. I don't know who I married, Lisa. I don't know who she is. The next morning, I get a frantic call from Mark's neighbor. Mark has attempted suicide, swallowing a bottle of sleeping pills with vodka. They found him in time, rushed him to the hospital where they pumped his stomach. He's alive but sedated. I don't tell Tyler or Bree. They've been through enough already. Instead, I call Detective Ramirez and tell him what happened. We were planning to arrest Angela today anyway, he says. We have more than enough evidence now. When they take Angela into custody, she doesn't resist. According to Detective Ramirez, she seems almost relieved, like she's been waiting for this moment. They charge her with multiple counts of attempted murder, child endangerment, and poisoning. That night, as I tuck Bree into bed, she looks healthier than she has in months. Her color is back, her eyes bright, no dark circles beneath them. Is Daddy okay? She asks, and I realize she's more perceptive than I've given her credit for. He's having a hard time, I answer honestly, but he loves you very much. And Tyler saved me from the bad medicine, she says matter-of-factly. I nod, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. Yes, he did. I knew something was wrong, she whispers. Every time I drank juice at Daddy's house, my tummy hurt after, but Angela said I was just being dramatic. My heart breaks all over again. Even at 8 years old, Bree knew something wasn't right, but the adults in her life, the ones who should have protected her, didn't listen. Later, I find Tyler sitting on the back porch, staring up at the stars. You okay? I ask, sitting beside him. He shrugs. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't been watching her, if I hadn't followed her at the wedding. I put my arm around him. But you did. You saved your sister. Dad tried to kill himself, he says suddenly, and I realize he knows more than I thought. How did you? I overheard your call with Detective Ramirez. He looks at me, his eyes too old for his 14 years. It's not your fault, Mom, and it's not mine either. It's Angela's. She did this to all of us. I hold my son close, this child who had to become a detective to save his sister when the adults around him failed. Tomorrow, we'll face more questions, more legal proceedings, more trauma to process. But tonight, both my children are safe, and the woman who tried to poison my daughter is behind bars. It's not a happy ending, but it's a beginning of something better, something honest, something healing. The psychiatric evaluation report sits on my kitchen table like a bomb about to detonate. I've read it 3 times, and each time the clinical language fails to soften the horror of what Angela did to my daughter. The psychiatrist diagnosed her with factitious disorder, imposed on another, formerly Munchausen by proxy, narcissistic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. Mom? Tyler stands in the doorway, his hair still wet from the shower. You okay? I close the folder quickly. Yeah, just reviewing some paperwork for the case. He sits across from me, his eyes too knowing for a 14-year-old. I heard Detective Ramirez on the phone earlier. They found something about Angela's past, didn't they? There's no point hiding it from him. Tyler's been ahead of all of us from the beginning. She was fired from her previous hospital in Cincinnati, I say carefully. They suspected her of interfering with patients, but couldn't prove anything conclusively. Tyler's expression doesn't change. And I hesitate, but he deserves the truth. 2 children died under her care there. The prosecutor is reopening those cases. He nods slowly, processing this information with the same methodical approach he used to uncover Angela's poisoning of Bree. So she's done this before. It looks that way. Tyler stares at his hands, the same hands that beat Angela unconscious at the wedding. His knuckles are still healing, faint yellow bruises where there were once angry red marks. I keep having nightmares about it, he says suddenly. Not about her poisoning Bree, about me hitting her. I can still feel her head when it hit the floor. He looks up at me, his eyes haunted. I've never heard anyone before. I reach across the table and take his hand. You saved your sister, Tyler. You did what you had to do. I know. His voice is barely audible, but sometimes I wonder if I wanted to hurt her, if I enjoyed it. Before I can respond, my phone rings. It's our attorney, Caroline. They've offered a plea deal, she says without preamble. 20 years with possibility of parole after 15. The prosecutor thinks it's solid given the evidence. Is Angela taking it? Caroline sighs. No. Her defense is claiming diminished capacity due to mental illness. They're saying she genuinely believes she was helping Bree by building her immunity through controlled exposure to toxins. That's insane. That's the point. They're going for an insanity defense. Caroline's voice hardens, but the prosecution has a strong counter. The journal they found shows meticulous planning and awareness that what she was doing was wrong. She documented hiding the substances from Mark, calculating dosages to cause symptoms without being lethal. That's not someone who doesn't understand their actions. After I hang up, I find Bree in the backyard, playing with the neighbor's dog through the fence. She's laughing, her cheeks flushed with healthy color. The dark circles under her eyes are gone. She's gained back the weight she lost during the months Angela was poisoning her. Her last blood work came back completely normal. Mom, can we get a dog? She asks when she sees me watching. Maybe, I say, smiling at her enthusiasm. We'll talk about it. That evening, Mark comes to visit. It's his his first time seeing the kid since his suicide attempt. He looks terrible thinner, with a haunted expression that makes him seem decades older, but he's sober, and his eyes are clear when he hugs Bree. Tyler hangs back, watching from the doorway with his arms crossed. "Tyler," Mark says, his voice breaking, "I need to talk to you." They go out to the back porch while Bree shows me a drawing she made at school. Through the window, I watch Mark speaking, his hands gesturing emphatically. Tyler stands rigid, his face unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, Mark pulls Tyler into a hug. For a moment, Tyler remains stiff, but then his arms come up and he returns the embrace. When they come back inside, Tyler's eyes are red, but his shoulders seem lighter. "Dad apologized," he tells me later that night. "He said he should have believed me when I tried to tell him about Angela. He said he was blinded by whatever she is. Do you forgive him?" Tyler considers this. "I don't know yet, but I'm trying." The trial begins 2 weeks later. The courthouse is packed with reporters. The story of a pediatric nurse poisoning her stepdaughter has made national news. Angela sits at the defense table in a modest blue dress that makes her look younger, more vulnerable. It's a calculated choice, like everything about her. When Tyler takes the stand to testify, his voice is steady as he describes the months of surveillance, his growing suspicions, and finally, what he witnessed at the wedding. "I saw her take a bottle from her purse," he says. "She looked around first to make sure no one was watching, then she put drops into Bree's juice. I knew right then that everything I suspected was true." Angela's attorney tries to paint Tyler as an angry, jealous teenager who resented his father's new wife, but Tyler remains composed, answering each question with a clarity that makes the jury lean forward in their seats. "Why didn't you just knock the drink away?" the defense attorney asks. "Why attack my client?" Tyler looks directly at Angela for the first time. "Because she would have just tried again. She had been poisoning my sister for months. I needed to stop her permanently." On the third day of the trial, the prosecution presents evidence from Angela's previous hospital. Former colleagues testify about their suspicions, about children who deteriorated mysteriously during her shifts, only to improve when she was off duty. Angela sits impassively through it all, occasionally whispering to her attorney, but showing no emotion, until the prosecution calls their final witness, the mother of one of the children who died under Angela's care in Cincinnati. As the woman describes her daughter's mysterious decline and eventual death, Angela's composure finally cracks. She stands abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "She was weak," Angela shouts, her face contorted with rage. "They were all weak. I was making them stronger." The courtroom erupts in chaos. The judge bangs his gavel, ordering Angela to sit down. Her attorney tries to restrain her, but she shakes him off. "And I would have made Bree stronger too if that little bastard hadn't interfered." She points at Tyler, her eyes wild. "She'll never survive without my help. She's too weak, just like her mother." The bailiffs move in, grabbing Angela's arms as she continues to rant. The judge orders the jury to disregard her outburst, but the damage is done. I look at their faces and see the same horror I feel reflected back. As they lead Angela from the courtroom, still shouting threats about what will happen to Bree without her treatments, I put my arm around Tyler's shoulders. "You were right all along," I whisper, "and you saved her." He nods, watching Angela disappear through the door to the holding cells. I know. The jury is filing back into the courtroom after just 4 hours of deliberation. Their faces are solemn, giving nothing away, but I can feel the tension radiating from Tyler beside me. His hand finds mine and squeezes so hard it almost hurts. On his other side, Mark sits rigidly, his face gaunt from weeks of therapy and the antidepressants his doctor prescribed after his suicide attempt. "All rise," the bailiff announces, and we stand as Judge Harmon enters. He looks tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from presiding over a case where a woman systematically poisoned a child. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" he asks, and the forewoman stands. "We have, Your Honor." I hold my breath as she unfolds the paper in her hands. Tyler's grip tightens further. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant, Angela Caldwell, guilty. A sound escapes from Mark, something between a sob and a sigh. Tyler doesn't move, doesn't breathe. On the count of aggravated child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. I close my eyes, relief washing over me like a physical wave. On the count of administering poison with intent to harm, we find the defendant guilty. By the time the forewoman finishes reading all 7 counts, each with the same verdict, Angela is sitting perfectly still at the defense table, her expression blank. She doesn't look at the jury or the judge. She doesn't look at us. It's as if she's retreated to some inner place where none of this is happening. The sentencing hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks later. We return to the courthouse on a rainy Tuesday morning, and I watch Angela enter in handcuffs, wearing the same modest blue dress from the trial. Her attorney makes a lengthy plea for leniency based on her mental health issues, arguing that treatment rather than incarceration would better serve justice. When it's the prosecutor's turn, she stands and speaks with quiet intensity. "Your Honor, the defendant systematically poisoned an 8-year-old child over a period of months. She kept detailed records of the poisons she administered and the symptoms they caused. She researched how to avoid detection, and when confronted with her actions, she showed no remorse. In fact, she claimed she was helping her victim." The prosecutor pauses, letting that sink in. The state requests the maximum sentence allowed by law. Judge Harmon looks directly at Angela. "Would the defendant like to make a statement before sentencing?" Angela rises slowly, her attorney whispering something in her ear that she seems to ignore. "I was making her stronger," she says, her voice clear in the silent courtroom. "Someday they'll understand that I was ahead of my time. The medical establishment is too afraid to push boundaries, but I was helping Bree develop immunities that would have protected her for life." She looks at me for the first time. "You've taken that protection away from her. Whatever happens to her now is on you." Judge Harmon's expression hardens. "Miss Caldwell, I've reviewed your psychiatric evaluation and the evidence presented at trial. While you clearly suffer from serious mental health issues, you also demonstrated awareness that your actions were wrong by hiding them and maintaining elaborate records to track your poisoning regimen." He leans forward. "I sentence you to 20 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for the first 15 years. The gavel comes down with a finality that echoes echoes through the courtroom. Outside, rain falls steadily as reporters thrust microphones toward us, asking how we feel about the verdict. Mark steps forward unexpectedly. My daughter nearly died because I didn't see what was happening right in front of me, he says, his voice breaking. I failed to protect her, but my son didn't fail. Tyler saved Bree's life, and I'll spend the rest of mine trying to be worthy of both my children. 2 months later, Tyler stands awkwardly on a small stage at the community center, looking uncomfortable in the button-up shirt I convinced him to wear. The mayor is presenting him with a Citizen Hero Award, praising his courage and quick thinking. This young man showed extraordinary bravery and determination, the mayor says, placing the medal around Tyler's neck. When adults failed to recognize the danger, he took action that saved his sister's life. Tyler mumbles a thank you into the microphone, his eyes finding mine in the audience. I give him a thumbs up, and he manages a small smile before escaping the stage as quickly as possible. I hate this, he whispers when he rejoins us. Everyone's treating me like I did something special. I just did what anyone would do. No, Bree says, looking up at her brother with complete adoration. Not everyone would have figured it out. Not everyone would have stopped her. Bree has flourished in the months since Angela's arrest. Her health has completely returned, her blood work normal, her energy boundless. The therapist she sees weekly says she's processing the trauma remarkably well for an 8-year-old, though she still has nightmares sometimes where Angela is putting bad medicine in her food. The medical board of nursing holds a special hearing to review Angela's case. I attend alone, leaving the kids with my mother. The board members listen gravely as the prosecutor presents evidence from both Bree's poisoning and the reopened cases of the children who died under Angela's care in Cincinnati. It is the unanimous decision of this board to permanently revoke Angela Caldwell's nursing license, the chairwoman announces. Furthermore, we are implementing new protocols for monitoring and reporting suspicious patterns of patient deterioration to ensure nothing like this happens again. As I leave the hearing, I receive a text from Mark's attorney. He's dropping the custody petition and acknowledging in writing that I should retain primary custody of both children. It's the final piece falling into place, the last battle I don't have to fight. That evening, I find Tyler in the backyard throwing a ball for the golden retriever puppy we adopted last week. Bree named him Hero, which made Tyler roll his eyes but secretly pleased him. Dad called, Tyler says, not looking at me as he throws the ball again. He's starting a new job next week, office work at some insurance company. That's good, I say carefully. Mark's recovery has been slow, with setbacks and progress happening in unpredictable waves. How did he sound? Tyler shrugs. Better. Still weird, but better. He hesitates. He asked if I'd come to his anger management group sometime. They have a special session for teens. I raise an eyebrow. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. Tyler watches the puppy bound back with the ball. Dr. Myers thinks it might help me too, with the nightmares and stuff. Dr. Myers is Tyler's therapist, a specialist in trauma and adolescent psychology who's been helping him process not just the wedding incident, but the months of helplessness he felt watching Bree get sicker while no one believed him. Do you want to go? I ask. He throws the ball again, hard, his jaw tight. Sometimes I get so angry, Mom. Not just about Angela, about everything. About Dad not believing me. About those kids who died because nobody stopped her sooner. He looks at me, his eyes too old for his 14 years. I'm afraid of what I might do if I get that angry again. I put my arm around his shoulders, feeling the tension in them. That's why therapy helps, and maybe the group will too. Bree comes running out the back door, her face lit up with excitement. Mom, Tyler, come see what I made. She grabs both our hands, pulling us toward the house. It's a family picture for my art therapy homework. On the kitchen table is a large piece of construction paper covered in colorful crayon drawings. There's me with exaggeratedly long hair, Mark standing slightly apart but still included, Tyler drawn much taller than he actually is, Bree herself with a big smile, and the puppy at their feet. See, she says proudly, it's all of us. Even though we don't all live together, we're still a family. Tyler studies the drawing, then looks at his sister with an expression that breaks my heart and heals it simultaneously. Yeah, he says softly, we are. Later, after the kids are in bed, I sit on the back porch with a glass of wine, watching the stars and thinking about how much has changed in a year. My phone buzzes with a text from Caroline, our attorney. Cincinnati prosecutors filing charges against Angela for deaths of previous patients. Solid case. Justice coming for those families too. I close my eyes and breathe deeply. There's still so much healing ahead for all of us. Tyler's anger issues, Mark's depression, Bree's nightmares, my own guilt for not seeing what was happening sooner. But for the first time in months, I feel something like peace settling over me. We're going to be okay. Different, scarred, changed forever by what happened, but okay. And that's enough for now.